And if kids are willing to get up this early on Sunday and watch the show, what if we put it on at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? What could happen?
That's when everything started to blow up.
And that's when it blew up.
For years, Toonami was the go-to place for action animation for a generation of kids. With so many iterations and lineups, the opinion on what Toonami was varies from person to person. But one thing people can't dispute was it being one of the earliest programming blocks to put anime at the forefront. Yes, others brought anime to television before, but due to Toonami's high quality, cinematic interstitials, music choices, and flashy intros with the hosts, they made the shows and anime seem like a premium product to a new and growing fan base. Though the road to what Toonami would eventually become was never a given. They started out as a nearly no-budget operation with a few dedicated and talented individuals passionate about the opportunity, an opportunity that would result in having a hand in shaping the way anime was consumed in the United States and helping to turn it into a multi-billion-dollar industry in the West it is now. This is the story of Toonami. The late 80s and early 90s would see the rise of the theme cable channel that would cater to individual tastes. Sci-fi, comedy, cooking, and even home and garden channels showed there was an underserviced market out there that the traditional television networks were not able to satisfy. One of the biggest of these demographics was children. Channels like Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel tried to meet these needs, but there was still a lot of space out there for more. Enter Ted Turner, a man that made a name for himself in the world of television by pioneering the superstation concept starting with WTBS, which would later just become known as TBS, and the cable news network.
This is CNN.
At this time in history, Ted has been in buying mode since the late 80s. These purchases result in him having amassed a substantial collection of cartoon libraries from a number of companies, but there wasn't a lot of places to utilize them. With that in mind, on October 1st, 1992, Turner would launch Cartoon Network, the first ever channel dedicated to animation. Though in the early days, it would primarily just be a home to classics and his newly acquired Hanna-Barbera library. Things would change as the network would find its footing, along with original animation. Cartoon Network also would introduce the precursor to Toonami in the form of Super Adventures and then the Power Zone programming blocks. The later block would be run by Matt Thompson and Adam Reed. They would go on to create C-Lab 2021 and Frisky Dingo for the later created Adult Swim late night block. The Power Zone mainly played older cartoons, with some of the notable ones being Voltron and Speed Racer. But the two men would soon leave Cartoon Network, and at the same time, it was decided that this time slot would need an overhaul.
The key thing about Toonami originally is it had zero money. So that means you figure out what you can use that is free. And the characters to choose from were the characters that Cartoon Network owned outright.
Seeking a change, Mike Lazo of Ghost Planet Industries, later renamed William Street, was put in charge of overseeing programming and original production for Cartoon Network. He would tap Sean Akins to head up the Power Zone's revamp, and Akins in turn would reach out to Jason DeMarco to help in creating this new initiative. Both had come up from the ranks of TNT and TBS, with Akins starting in the mailroom before working his way up to producer roles within the company before his jump over to Cartoon Network. This duo and other dedicated crew would work for months on what exactly this new block would be, as well as figure out the ideal lineup. According to Akins and DeMarco, they would go over numerous name ideas before finally settling on Toonami.
And brought that to Mike Lazo. He picked that. Yeah, he picked that name. That name's fun. That name will work. Yeah, he picked that name after saying that we were not allowed to use Toon in any name. Right. That was the name he then immediately chose from the list.
Sadly, this endeavor didn't have a lot of budget, so some shows they wanted were for a time out of their reach. But the Toonami team had a whole lot of passion. Akins and DeMarco felt they could put their mark on the network and help usher in the programming that they themselves wanted to see on the channel. Toonami launched on March 17th, 1997 by starting with Thundercats opening the block in the 4 p.m. slot. The rest of the initial lineup would look as follows. The cartoon roulette spot consisted of Hanna-Barbera shorts and Fleischer Superman cartoons. That would then be followed up by Voltron, though otherwise it was pretty much in line with what was on Power Zone and not too radically different from the shows that were airing previously in this time slot. The 4 to 6 p.m. weekday slot was considered a primetime slot for kids programming, as with their target audience out of school. But before adults would control the television, advertisers would have a captive audience for their commercials. Toonami, though, would not only be competing against other cable channels, but also the likes of Fox Kids, Disney Afternoon, and Kids WB on network channels. It would take a lot for them to stand out in this competitive crowd. The difference that Toonami brought from the start would be bringing in 3D animated intro, outro, and interstitial segments featuring an animated Moltar from Space Ghost to host the newly formed block created by the team at William Street. Along with well-produced promos to sell the shows on offer, Moltar was chosen to host Toonami as the network had found success with Space Ghost Coast to Coast as one of the network's first original hits. And it also worked into the Space Planet Industries name the company was known for at this moment.
How about I come out at the beginning of every show and hit you upside the head with a hammer?
Plus, it made sense to have the fictional producer character of the show be the host. Though that isn't all that Moltar would solve for the team, as his design was easier to animate him in 3D, since with the visor look, there wasn't any need to animate dialogue, a lesson that they would continue into their future hosts. Also, since he was voiced by C. Martin Croker, a William Street employee, the team had easier access to him to record lines like introducing the shows, ads, and segments than to get a dedicated voice actor. These actions would help set it apart from the rest of the network and other children's programming in general. This setup would continue for over the next year, with some shows being worked out for new ones, but aside from the real adventures of Johnny Quest, most of the shows during this time had been out of production for years. Toonami had started to craft their own identity on the network, but it was still missing the pieces to truly make the block stand out.
We were able to, keep the cost down in that way. And then the stuff looked good. So when you start, delivering animation and material that looks cool and you're not burning the house down, then they will let you do whatever.
In early 1998, the USA Network had made the decision to stop airing the Deke-produced, heavily edited English dub of Sailor Moon within their weekday morning cartoon block, something that they would start to phase out entirely within the same year. And without a home, Sailor Moon was either destined to go back to the syndication route or disappear from US television completely. Due to it being dubbed with a Canadian cast, they were able to secure a good slot on YTV in Canada since it did enough to qualify as a Canadian production, and they had built fans in the North. In the US though, Sailor Moon had struggled to gain any foothold till this point, but mainly due to being placed in undesired syndication spots, usually to fill airtime before the network's actual cartoon lineup would begin for the day. USA Network did give the show its biggest boost up till this point, but it was still stuck on a channel losing ground to children's themed networks, and now it didn't have a home for a short time. The rights expired, and whoever was programming at the time said, "You guys want Sailor Moon? Because it's available." And we were like, yeah. Sailor Moon would premiere on Toonami on June 1st, 1998, opening the block, a position that until recently had been reserved for Thundercats. Gone now is Cartoon Roulette, and for the first time, there is a lineup with 3 shows with anime origins on Toonami, with Robotech and Voltron rounding up the line with Sailor Moon. This move would finally give Sailor Moon massive attention in the US and build an audience that had an easier time being able to access the show than ever before. They would hold the opening slot for nearly 2 years as the show to kickstart Toonami each day. Another show that had long been on Akins and DeMarco's wish list was that of Dragon Ball Z. Akins, being a fan, had spent time watching Dragon Ball Z on the local UHF channel. I know there are other kids like me doing this. I know people are sending around bootleg VHS tapes, and I'm like, I bet if we can get this thing and put it on at 5 in the afternoon, we might have a hit on our hands. And we really did. Dragon Ball Z would premiere on Toonami on August 31st, 1998, and soon would become another massive hit for the channel, and even surpassing Sailor Moon. At the same time that they started, another Japanese import was also starting to make waves as well, and just a little over a week later, the Pokemon anime would start in syndication on September 7th, 1998. Soon, Pokemon would be everywhere, and buoyed by a video game, card game, manga, it was hard to escape Pokemania. Toonami capitalized on this newfound interest in anime as major news outlets were trying to figure out exactly why kids were now tuning in to cartoons that the reporters were unable to understand. It was really weird to suddenly have the Wall Street Journal writing about Dragon Ball Z, and 90% of the people who wrote about it got it completely wrong, whether it was positive or negative. That was what clued us in that we were having a larger impact. Dragon Ball Z would become a linchpin to the lineup, and with a number of the movies dubbed, they would use them to host special events during this time. Toonami, now bolstered by Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, were finally finding success they hadn't dreamed of, and this was even with the limited number of episodes for each series that would result in them having to go back to the beginning of the runs often. Both series would start to dub further episodes so that they could meet the newfound demands. As one of the channel's most successful initiatives, the use of the Toonami branding was something that they were looking to continue. And on July 10th, 1999, they would be given the opportunity with the first broadcast installment of Toonami's Midnight Run, a late-night version that would start a 5-hour block on Saturdays before eventually getting a weekday, hour-long version. In hindsight, this was a precursor to what would eventually become Adult Swim, as it did show an interest in late-night programming for the network. With this shift, Toonami would usher in their first major overhaul, and a new host by way of Tom.
Started with Sonny Stitt.
So it's a brand new Toonami, but the mission objectives remain the same. My name is Tom.
Who was Krillin on Dragon Ball. So we thought, well, this guy sounds young, he's a good tie-in, because, you know, he's a voice on one of our biggest shows.
Or Toonami Operations Module. The new visored host of the block changed the setting to that of the spaceship The Absolution, a setting that Akins felt fit the line's focus on space-themed series and would only become more true in the upcoming years. Seeing Toonami as a place that understood anime in particular, Bandai had gone to Cartoon Network to pitch them on their newest attempt to break into the US market with the Gundam franchise, in the form of an English dub for the series Gundam Wing. Being set in its own universe, it didn't carry the baggage of 20 years of continuity that series spawned from the 1979 origin had, and was new enough to feel contemporary. Luckily for Bandai, they had a person that was waiting for the chance to experience Gundam in Jason DeMarco. I knew of it and read all about it. I was hunting around Japanese hobby stores and video stores for Gundam in the 90s. Back then, you had to go to cons, and if you got lucky, someone might have a fan sub that they were selling that they weren't supposed to. But I never was able to get my hands on any of it. Utilizing the first 20 episodes of the series, DeMarco would write a 2-minute trailer that would draw in viewers to this new series, and would also be narrated by Optimus Prime himself, Peter Cullen.
From the Gundam universe, a new chapter in one of the greatest anime sagas of all time, Gundam Wing. Weekdays at 5:30. Suit up.
Those who have laid eyes on a Gundam shall not live to tell about it.
Only Toonami.
This cinematic short would be many Americans' first introduction to the world of Gundam, and end up the home for the series' many incarnations for years to come. To ensure interest in the new series, they would also air an uncut version on the new weekday version of Toonami Midnight Run that they were unable to air in the earlier time slot due to violence and language concerns. Toonami would continue to switch up their lineup with new and interesting anime, even drawing in series that were more successful here than in Japan, such as Outlaw Star and The Big O, the later of which would even gain a second season co-produced by Cartoon Network that would air on Adult Swim due to the popularity it had on Toonami. Things would continue to shift for the block, and after traumatizing a generation of kids with the death of Tom 1,
Tom is dead. The Absolution meets a new hero. Enter Tom 2.
we would be introduced to the Stephen Bloom version of Tom, a role he would continue to voice till this day. Sadly, over the years though, Toonami would start to fall out of favor, as easier access to anime through DVDs and later streaming services would make the block no longer the draw it once was. Cartoon Network was also looking to rebrand as CN and move to more live-action programming. The network would bring Toonami to a close on September 20th, 1998, just a little over 10 years to the day after they premiered Dragon Ball Z. With a final farewell with the then Tom 4, Bloom would head off into the sunset.
Oh, hi, Adult Swim. I got the results of the test back. I definitely have April Fools.
On April Fool's 2012, Adult Swim began with the intro to Tommy Wiseau's The Room, which it had aired the last 3 years before cutting to Tom 3 on The Absolution. They would fill the night with classic and new anime and present the old Toonami feel. This would be enough of a spark to prove that Toonami still had its place on the network, and after a social media blitz would earn its own spot in the Adult Swim lineup, which it has held since. While it may no longer hold the position it once did at its peak, Toonami did a lot to educate the viewers about anime and is responsible for creating a generation of fans who had to run home from school so as not to miss the latest episode of their favorite series. While others would try and copy their success, most of these blocks were often lacking the passion that the team at Toonami had. They would make you care and cast the shows, music, and video games that they liked as premium products that you had to experience. Since its inception, Toonami didn't ever feel like it was trying to chase trends, but just show the stuff it thought was cool and bring you along for the ride. Even with the limitations that would be put on the block aimed at children, the love always came through. In a day and age where anime is accessible as ever, it may have never gotten there without those few dedicated staffers who managed to take a chunk of programming time that others had not succeeded at a channel that was more known for showing endless episodes of the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo, and moneyballed their resources in such a way that companies would start to come to them. There is still something fun about a block of different series that one is able to watch together over continuing to binge the same anime. When done well, it allows a lot of different tastes to come through. It is hard to replicate the watching experience of Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, and Gundam Wing in the same sitting. There was a time that Moltar and later Tom ruled cable airwaves and was the envy of their competition. Toonami is now so ingrained into the makeup of series like Dragon Ball Z and a host of others that it is hard to separate them from Toonami. And for those that watched, not thinking of some of the ads they aired, it wasn't just a home for anime, but the spot where they were finally allowed to be themselves.
The opportunity that we have and what we ended up doing, lights out home run. I wouldn't imagine a success like that could ever be paralleled again.